So my name's Seb Hare. I work for Google Cloud. I run our strategic partnerships across the UK for all startups, which is the relevance of being here today. But this isn't about me. This is about the pioneers, those that invest, and those that are predicting our future. So I'm very excited to make these introductions. Right, where do we start? So I'm joined on stage today by Shruti. We finished each other's sentences, good. An investment manager at Future Planet Capital, where she leads space tech investments within the UK Innovation and Science Seed Fund and sits on the investment committee of Blue Ocean Fund. We're also joined today by John Sun, the founder of Upside Down VC, which is the substitute to friends and family rounds for early stage startups, and by Edwin Appiah, who is the founding partner at Cornerstone VC, an early stage fund focused on a people-first investment strategy, investing at pre-seed and seed stage in UK technology businesses led by diverse founding teams. So I'm going to ask everyone for a little round of applause now, because I think these are phenomenal people who got on stage. It also brought me 10 seconds to move my thumb on the phone to get to the questions. So, where to start? I think most people want to hear about backgrounds and journeys and how we've all got here today. So, I'm going to ask the same question to all three of you to begin with, and Shruti, we'll start with you. And it'd just be great to understand what has your journey looked like to get you to this focus area that you're now in. And I guess if you could talk through kind of the background and just the journey to date.
Sure. Can you hear me out there? Okay. Great. Hi everyone, I'm Shruti. I started off working, so I've got a background in mathematics, and then I graduated, and then I luckily didn't have to have a midlife crisis, so I started doing impact consulting right out of university. I was in the world of impact. I worked in Singapore for about 4 or 5 years, worked with Singapore government, worked on a lot of different innovation programs with SMEs, and just across the board with incubators and accelerators, and really sort of fell in love with early stage innovation, let's say. And then found my way to London because I felt like consulting was a bit limiting and I wanted to move into investing. Studied a little more. And then joined a climate tech fund here called Sustainable Ventures. I ran their accelerator program, which sort of has about 8 companies that come in every year. They're a pre-seed to seed investor. And then I managed their portfolio, so about 35 climate tech early stage startups, and invested out of their fund. Interestingly, they raise their fund on seeders every year, so had lots of angels and worked with lots of angels through that process. And then spent a lot of time doing interesting climate tech innovations and worked on really building these teams because they came to us at such early stages, and fell in love with the world of climate, let's say, and have moved on since then to now work with Future Planet Capital, with an impact investing firm, manage about 300 million in AUM. I sit on 2 of our funds, so the UK fund, which is the early stage deep tech fund, and then the Blue Ocean Fund. And I think I found my way to deep tech because my time at SVE, I really enjoyed seeing lots of great climate stuff. But I think when I was choosing between hardware, software, I would always find myself gravitating towards the material chemistry pieces. I think deep tech was where I found my niche, so that's kind of how I landed up here.
Fantastic! It's great to have you here, and I also forgot to say I run our deep tech division at Google Cloud as well, so very close and passionate to my heart. Edwin, go over to you.
Thank you. It's really difficult because normally when I walk into rooms and I say that I'm a VC, I tend to get a bit of a round of applause, but in this room, I've got the complete opposite. But again, I'm Edwin. I represent Cornerstone VC. But in terms of my background, I've had a pretty atypical journey. I started in banking, not investment banking, but in wealth management. I worked at Coutts & Co. I cannot confirm or deny if I supported the Queen or the King. And I spent my time there looking after SMBs, high net worth individuals across a number of jurisdictions. But while I was there, I actually had a bit of a midlife crisis. And I thought, look, I've got a pretty good job. I'm getting paid pretty well, but I wanted to do something a bit more meaningful. So myself, my friends, my brother, we got together and at the side of our desks while we were still working in the corporate sphere, we started an angel syndicate. And we actually started this angel syndicate to provide capital to those that were struggling to receive capital historically. So those that were based outside of the M25, those that were female founders, female-led startups, and as well ethnically diverse founders, because we could see clearly there was this equity gap. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to become the aunties and uncles who were able to give these founders that startup, that seed capital to help them and put them on the right path to then progress. So that's, I guess, a little bit of my journey, but yeah, really looking forward to hearing a bit more.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. And over to you, John.
Yeah, couple of things. So, ex-EdTech founder for about 3.5 years, and spent a long time doing a lot of ecosystem building. So, building communities and events for both founders and investors alike, right? And I think what led me to, discovering my investment thesis was just, 11:30 p.m. Founders are unhinged. They're telling you all the areas that they're frustrated in terms of their fundraise and everything, right? And I think just off of a lot of the complaints I've been hearing, I spent a lot of time doing a lot of research as to figure out how do you make the funding landscape more equitable. And for me, the lens I wanted to take, much like Edwin, kind of like looking at that friends and family round, sort of like ish area, but what we wanted to do was instead find ways to utilize creative term sheets to basically, act as as a sort of mechanism for founders to sell shares in themselves, right? And so, just spending a lot of time learning about how you creatively blend equity and debt together to allow founders to keep more ownership, to allow us to, get decent backstop on our returns and things like that. And so there's a lot of innovative funds that we drew inspiration from, like Indie VC, Earnest Capital Calm Fund, and we actually spun off of an innovative US fund called Chisos Capital that blends an income share agreement with the safe note. So I can talk a little bit more about that later. But what we're hoping to do is essentially use creative blended finance to give a lot more founders much more chances.
Brilliant. And I mean, you started talking about your thesis there. So it'd be quite interesting to jump a little bit ahead before we come back again. And so what are the future bets then? What are you currently betting on?
What do you define by future bets in this scenario?
Ooh, a question back to me that I wasn't expecting. How would you define it?
So it's up to me to So we're betting on humans. And basically what defines a lot of the backstop of our thesis is, what if you could bet on a really, really talented human being and their long-term career potential? Which is essentially, kind of like this thesis of then, okay, invest in the human being's long-term career potential, and you do this via a way in which you give capital to a really, really talented person. In our case, where they could start a business, a successful business, and whether or not they succeed in the business or quit the business and go get a full-time job later, we get our returns back either way, but not through a personal guarantee or an interest or anything crazy like that. So ultimately, just finding ways to evaluate and ultimately bet on those that don't have a rich uncle or rich auntie or stuff like that.
And very quickly, because just following on from that, so how do you find those kind of folk then? Is it network? I mean, it's been asked a lot today though, but things like referrals have come up. Some folk respond to LinkedIn. Is there an area that you find it's easier to find folk like this, or do you have to work pretty hard to find them?
It's a mix. I mean, I think one thing I say a lot is when you make a lot of friends in the industry, people just send you stuff left, right, and center. And I think I'm kind of fortunate enough, I think, owing to, a lot of my ecosystem building background and yeah, just I think my abilities to, tap into loads of different networks, just friends send me a bit of everything, which is kind of cool. Yeah,
awesome. Well, Shruti, I'm going to hand over to you to answer this question as well. You can be as broad or specific as you like on the question, so it's over to you.
On my future thesis, is it?
That's yeah.
Okay. Well, I think it depends, right? I think the sort of I'm in a slightly different spot compared to Edwin and Jonathan. I work for a much larger fund. We decide thesis. Largely, it's defined by LPs. On the UK fund, for instance, we've got, it's entirely government backed. So we've got investors like, well, all our sort of LPs are government agencies. So we've got the likes of BBSRC, which is the Biotech Research Council, and then all the way to the UK Space Agency most recently. So that kind of defines the thesis of the technologies that we're betting on. But I guess personally, as an investor, even while working for a VC, I feel like every investor can kind of choose the kind of investor they want to be, both in terms of how you deal with founders, in terms of your DD, in terms of all of that. And for me, I guess because my background's largely been in climate, I think that's the area that I've always focused on. What I also always forget to do during my intro is say that that's my day job, and then in the evening I run a nonprofit called Climate Mosaic, which sits at the sort of intersection of climate and diversity, and we've been around for 2 years, and I think that came from a place of what am I betting on? And I guess the thesis there is really, you know, when you look at the world and you look at where capital is and you look at what the regions that are going to be most impacted by climate change, there's just a massive sort of dissociation. So it's about the kind of founders we want to back. And I guess the mission there is to have a climate investing and innovating world look like the actual world looks, which is very different from the rooms that I walk into on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the big bet. And then within climate, I could talk endlessly, but if I had to choose sort of 3 key areas that I'm very, very excited about right now, one would be everything to do with methane. I think it is an underappreciated gas that needs to be sequestered compared to CO2. So we've got a nice little deep dive into methane, and recently made an investment into a company that does that. And then quite excited by all things nature-based carbon capture as well, so in the ocean, and things that impact sort of coastal communities. So I think we can go very deep techie, or we can go quite, ecosystem thesis as well. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. And Edwin?
I think you mentioned at the beginning, Seb, that Cornerstone VC, we are people-focused. Just to expand on that and actually talk a little bit about the journey, continuation of my journey. So when we started the Angel Syndicate back in 2018, we did that for about 2 years or so, and we used our own capital, so that hard-earned cash that we had made through our corporate jobs, to make investments into these diverse founders, not only diverse in the nature in terms of whether it's their gender or their ethnicity, but also diverse in terms of geography across the UK. We did that. We made 22 investments. We saw those 22 investments graduate from pre-seed all the way up to seed and Series A. And we really started to get this reception from the press, from other investors and angels. And then we've spent the next 2 years during COVID, which was a fantastic time, on Zoom calls, speaking to LPs, really talking to them about our journey and what we were achieving. And what we were achieving, I guess to answer the investment thesis question, is that backing people first, regardless of what background they come from, can actually deliver alpha. So we have this saying within our business that diversity can deliver alpha, and actually diversity is a separate asset class in its own, very similar to impact, what impact was 10 or 20 or so years ago. We think that betting on founders that come from different backgrounds, looking at this cohort of founders, can really help to unlock this opportunity. And the opportunity is that overlooked founders, if I go back to my banking days, think of it as a dislocated market, or something that people don't spend a lot of their time on. And normally when I spoke to my clients, I always used to speak to them about identifying great opportunities. And I would normally talk to them about hidden or unlocked opportunities that could then give them some sizable returns. I think that's exactly what we're doing here with Cornerstone, and backing these founders that no one's really looking at. And we've also found that these particular founders are resourceful because they haven't received much capital over the many years. and they can be resilient, and they can also, as seen in multiple research studies, they can actually deliver competitive bottom financial returns. So yeah, that's what we're betting on at the moment.
Yeah, fantastic. And within that, are there any kind of themes around maybe markets or industries or sectors that you're seeing a bit of a trend on?
Yeah, so we're actually a generalist fund. We back business models more than we back particular industries or verticals. So in the main, B2B enterprise SaaS is a big area for us, but also networks and marketplaces and platform, as well as infrastructure. These are the models that we really focus our time and energy on. And we've already seen some great successes across our portfolio, across both our angel syndicate portfolio and our very recent institutional fund, where one of our legal tech businesses, which is an enterprise SaaS business, has gone from pre-seed all the way up to Series A, received funding from the likes of M12, Google, Sequoia, Octopus Ventures. So our focus on B2B SaaS, network and marketplaces, we've been able to really deliver some great results from that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Congratulations. And John, it's almost on the theme of a bit of story there. Is there a particular story or highlight kind of over the last couple of years that would be worth sharing with everyone here today?
From like a portfolio
Yeah,
investment?
exactly.
That's an interesting one. There could be a few. Yeah, I'm trying to think.
So this is what happens when you got a script. I got completely lost, but I thought it was a nice question.
No worries. I mean, I'll give a couple brief anecdotes of like how we met and invested in some of our portfolio companies. That's probably the most interesting way for me to answer, right? One of them, I think, I met at like one of the first ever post-COVID demo days, and I think that was like kind of a mutual interest. I think like I liked like what she was doing, and like she just dug my name up on this fat ass database, and like and cold DM me was like, hey, I filled out your application to apply for investment, and then I was like, that's dope. And then so our team really liked her. They're doing an AI powered eSIM marketplace that actually covered me a lot every time I travel, right? So happy to link you all the deets for the app just to use for the next time y'all travel. It's super duper helpful. What's another investment? Oh, one came from an intro. That was really cool. And then I think they were in the middle of a bridge round, so that was kind of dope. And then like since then we've kind of tried to make them a few intros here and there. I don't really think we have any like sort of like mind-blowing stories of like just like intros or like how we've met founders or like how we've tried to help them out. I mean, I feel like my answers are kind of a bit vanilla on that end.
Your answers are great, mate. So I'm going to hand over to Shruti now. So I might actually follow some of the script here. There's a couple of questions I think would be very key for the audience to kind of listen and learn from. And I think the first one, Shruti, is really thinking through the investments themselves. So often it's crucial that you do your angel raise, and then you're going to have to get an institutional fundraise. So in your view, what is it that the VCs are looking for in impact companies specifically? And are there anything angels could be doing to be aware of that when they're kind of choosing their portfolio?
Yeah, I think somebody mentioned it on the panel before about the spotting winners panel, which is Simon's point about look at everything, look at every pitch deck, not just the ones that come through warm referrals. Like, I think I've probably seen some great ones that have come through cold referrals. But even more interesting is when I get approached by an angel investor going, I'm looking at a pitch deck. Do you have 15 minutes to chat about it? Because what's really interesting to me as a VC then is, yes, this might be a bit early, but if I can track the journey and if I can support this angel, make sure that the investment goes through in a way that is palatable to VCs later, then I could go in on the next round. So I think, if you're an angel and you're looking at a pitch deck and you think there is a VC out there who might be an expert at it, I don't know why a wise, smart kind VC would not respond to you. So I think that's one for me. I think I would, if I were an angel, I would ensure that there is that element of validation that's been done by the VC who will potentially come in the next round. So what would we look for? We would look for team. We would look for a team that is, we're a really early stage investor. We invest with angel syndicates very often. We're looking at teams that are actually able to deliver the technology and deliver on the roadmap. We don't have an issue with not having a commercially minded team. We are really focused that the technology, if you're an academic founder, if this is what you knew and this is what you're good at, that's completely okay. We will support you. It's our role once we come in to support you find your co-founder or, the commercial wrapper. We'd also look for IP on the deep tech side. So we would be quite keen to see how does the technology actually work. And we do demos, we go in there. I know there was some mentions of examples like Theranos and things like that. So we're all obviously always scared. So we now all do trips to places like Dundee.
What do you think of Dundee? Is it,
Love it. Love the shop biscuits there. But yeah. Sorry, Seb was going to ask me that anyway. He told me he would because I told him a story before, so I just called it out myself. So we spend time doing, visits and things like that because we actually want to see the tech in operation. We want to see the data and the results that come out of it, even if it's a lab scale. So tech, team, and then the other one I'd probably look for is one thing that I think people don't think of enough is this a VC investable business, right? Yeah. So is there going to be an exit? Who is going to acquire this at the end of the day, and who the customers are going to pay for it? If there isn't an acquisition strategy, then a VC will say, great business, great tech, project finance is your way. You don't need VC money for this. Yeah. It's not the right kind of money. It doesn't mean that the company isn't great, right? So I think just thinking from that mindset a bit would be quite useful, I guess.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And Dundee is a lovely place. Edwin, the question I kind of wanted to ask, actually, you semi-answered already, which is around the fact that often underlooked founders are seen as the right thing to do or the nice thing to do, but obviously it's more than that. It's an important part of an investor's thesis. But as we touched upon that, I'm kind of keen to how do you then actually deliver on that? So how do you go out to the community? Where should we as investors be looking? And can you give us maybe advice on how to achieve that across your portfolio?
No, absolutely. So we actually have a couple of origination buckets. Because we originally started off as a syndicate, we tend to get a lot of our very early deal flow from our syndicate. And then additionally to that, we have multiple relationships across the country with strategic investors, top tier funds that provide us with deal flow, especially when it doesn't hit their particular mandates. So for example, BGF is one of our investors, our anchor investor, and they tend to look at opportunities that are at ARR revenues of in excess of £2 to £3 million, and anything that they receive through their channel, their funnel, that's below that, they pass it on to us as long as it meets our mandate and our criteria. So we have multiple strategic relationships, but then also you have to go really deep into the networks. We have operator dinners. We basically try to, as best as we can, to bring our ecosystem together. So we speak to incubators, we speak to accelerators, the likes of Foundervine, Black Valley, 10 by 10. There are lots of really great incubators and accelerators that are trying to support very early stage founders from diverse backgrounds, and we really link into that. But then finally, we have a junior software developer, part of our team, and she has spent the last 5 or 6 months building essentially a web crawler that crawls on top of companies' house database and other data repositories that has private information, private business information, and it identifies founders that may, just through their name, whether it be their first names based on gender. So if it was John, it would assume that this particular founder is a male, and if the founder's surname was a Pia, it would assume that it may potentially be West African or Black Afro-Caribbean. And that particular software is also given us very, very early access to deal flow from founders that come from diverse backgrounds. So we look at it in lots of different ways. Yeah, hopefully that helps to answer your question.
It does, and if you'd like that to be built on Google Cloud, please do let me know. We're happy to help.
We'll connect after for sure.
And John, I think we've got time for another question here as well, which is, what do you think are the biggest challenges for founders when it comes to raising early stage funding? And how should the investment landscape adapt to meet these challenges to ensure important ideas get funded?
Yeah, I think, well, the first thing is I think no matter I think what you do with the investment landscape, the fact is that the majority of founders are not going to get funding the way that they're supposed to. And if the majority of founders get the funding that they're supposed to, while it levels up the playing field for everybody, it's still, I mean, for better or for worse, like if 10 people are building or working on a similar, sort of like field or idea, like maybe 2 or 3 of them are going to carve out any meaningful market share, right? And so the challenge for the challenge for a lot of founders is they assume they build stuff in too much of like a silo, right? They live in their own little bubble or world and they assume that they're the greatest thing that ever existed, where in reality, everybody's got to try to understand each other a little bit more. So I think there's too many challenges to say in one answer, but if I can speak on one challenge, I think investors got to understand founders better, and founders got to, as they're continuing to build their business, they have to put their feet into an angel investor's shoes. Okay, I'm going to build my deck in a way that someone can understand it in 8 seconds or less. Okay, I'm going to build stuff in a way that like is going to be really, really hard for someone to turn down a call. Okay, too many founders think that they think through a nearsighted kind of lens, and it's probably not that great for them.
Yeah, brilliant, thank you. As we have a minute left, I think a minute 36, I may give some time back, but I'm also going to ask one more question that none of us are prepared for. So if you could describe your investing journey, maybe emotively, physically, however, in one word, what would that word be? And you have roughly 1 minute and 20 seconds to get through this. John.
Impact, honestly.
You nailed that. As the impact investor, what are your views, Shruti?
Oh, you just took my word.
Should have gone first.
Rewarding.
Oh, Edwin. If you don't say anything, we've got 50 seconds. We're good. We can just time out.
I'm trying to build the suspense.
Oh.
I think it would be atypical.